You have never once in your life washed yourself the way every human before about 4,000 years ago had to. No soap, not a bar, not a gel, not a single bubble. And your ancestors still managed to walk around without their skin falling off. So how? What do you actually do about a body that sweats, leaks, and collects dirt when the chemical that solves it has not been invented yet? Let us start with when soap actually shows up, because it is later than most people assume. The oldest written soap recipe we have is a Sumerian clay tablet from around 2,200 years before Christ. It lists water, an alkali, and cassia oil. Egyptian medical texts describe mixing animal fats with alkaline salts to make a paste for washing skin. That is roughly 4,000 years ago. Our species is around 300,000 years old. So for something like 98% of human history, nobody had soap and nobody was waiting for it either. Here's the first thing that changes how you think about this. Water on its own is not nothing. Plain water and a bit of rubbing removes most of what is actually on you, because most of it is loose dirt, dead skin, and dust sitting on the surface. Soap is for grease. Everything else comes off mechanically. And ancient humans had things that work better than your hands. Sand scours. Fine clay binds to oil and lifts it away, which is the same principle behind the clay masks people pay money for now. Wood ash mixed with water makes a genuinely alkaline solution that cuts through fat. None of that needs a recipe. It needs somebody noticing that the greasy hands come clean faster near the fire pit. There is a famous Roman story about this, that soap was discovered on Mount Sapo, where fat from animal sacrifices ran down into the ashes and washed into the river below. It is a good story. There is no evidence any of it is true, and no Mount Sapo has ever been found. But the chemistry in it is real. And it is exactly the accident that could happen to anyone cooking meat over a wood fire for a few 100,000 years. Now the part nobody tells you. Your skin is not a passive surface waiting to be scrubbed. It produces sebum, an oil that waterproofs you and slows bacteria down. Its surface sits at a slightly acidic pH, usually somewhere between 4 and 5.5, and that acidity is itself a defense. On top of that lives a whole population of bacteria that occupy the space so worse organisms cannot. Modern washing strips all of that off, several times a day, which is why so many people need moisturizer. An ancient human was running the system as designed. Oilier? Yes. Definitely smellier. But not defenseless. And about the smell, because that is where everybody's mind goes. Human sweat comes out essentially odorless. The famous smell is made later by bacteria on your skin breaking down compounds from the apocrine glands in your armpits into sulfur-containing molecules called thioalcohols. Those bacteria have been with us the whole time. So yes, ancient humans smelled strongly by our standards. The thing is, so did everyone else, all the time, with no exceptions and nothing to compare it to. Your nose stops registering a constant smell within minutes. A smell only becomes information when it changes, which means the whole idea of smelling bad requires other people who smell good, and that is a very recent invention. So if it was not really about smell, what were they actually doing? They were fighting the thing that genuinely hurts you, which is not dirt. It is what lives in the dirt, and in your hair, and in your bedding. Look at what survives. In 2022, archaeologists working at Lachish in Israel published an ivory comb about 3,700 years old. Carved into it is one of the oldest full sentences ever found in alphabetic script, and it reads, "May this tusk root out the lice of the hair and the beard." That is what an ancient person chose to write on their comb. Not a name, a complaint. We can date this problem far further back than that. Head lice and clothing lice are separate lineages, and clothing lice can only exist once there are clothes to live in. Genetic work comparing the two puts the split somewhere in the range of roughly 100,000 years ago, which is a strange and brilliant way to date the invention of wearing something. Then there is Sabudu Cave in South Africa. Excavations there found layers of plant bedding around 77,000 years old, and the top layer was made of leaves from a tree whose foliage contains natural insecticidal compounds. People were choosing which leaves to sleep on. That is not a coincidence you can hand-wave away. And then there is a smoke, which is doing quiet work in the background of every one of these shelters. A fire burning inside a living space fumigates it. It drives out insects, it dries damp bedding, and it settles compounds onto skin and hair that discourage things from living there. Everyone in that group smelled like wood smoke, permanently. Teeth are their own story. And here the evidence is unusually direct. Neanderthal and early human teeth carry tiny grooves along the gum line, the kind made by working something pointed between the teeth over and over. They used toothpicks. There are also chewing sticks, frayed at one end, used across the ancient world long before anything resembling a toothbrush. But we know it was not enough, and we know it because of what archaeologists actually study. Hardened dental plaque, called calculus, survives on ancient teeth for tens of thousands of years, and it traps food particles, plant fragments, and bacteria inside it. Some of the best evidence we have about ancient diets comes directly from the fact that nobody was brushing properly. Their failure is our archive. So put the whole picture together. An ancient human is oily, permanently smoky, scrubbed with sand and ash when it mattered, swimming in rivers, combed obsessively for lice, sleeping on leaves chosen for what they repel, and carrying a mouth full of plaque. By our standards, filthy. By theirs, actively maintained. Because clean did not mean sterile, and it never had to. Clean meant not infested. It meant your hair was not crawling, your bedding was not biting you, and the wound on your leg was not going the wrong way. That is a completely rational definition, and it is the one that kept people alive for 300,000 years without a single bar of soap. The bar of soap is the newcomer here, not the dirt.